Okay, hold on. Facebook kicked us out, so let me edit this. Gosh, I hate Facebook. All right. See if we can change the time, and then I'll just go ahead and start it early. If I change it to this. Oh, come on. Don't be stupid. Now if I
can't help it. It's part of my nature.
All right, there we go. Is it a sin to be late? Oh, good question. We're already being hit. Okay, here we go. Oh. All right, wait, we are live. Hold on, we are already live. It started live without us. So that's great. So we're already on air. No intro. Totally botched all that. And we got our question here already. Is it a sin to be late?
Way to begin our retrospective. It really takes us back to the days when we were more amateur than we are now.
I know, right? So yeah, so that went real well for an intro.
Yeah, I mean, now we're professional amateurs.
Or something like that. All right. Well, tonight, what you're going to get to see is a completely unprepared show, as I am scrambling to get things playing right here on this end, which is clearly going swimmingly. But we were trying to get a retro intro to play for everybody, which I may actually have us able to do that now. So we will see if we can go ahead and play this intro this way. And this way, everybody gets the intro. It's a little late. Okay, we're 2 minutes into the show. Whatever. But you get to hear the old intro versus the new one. So worth the wait, maybe. We'll see. Also, tonight, we will take your questions. So questions, comments. Is it a sin to be late? I guess it depends on what for. What do you guys think?
I suppose if there was a promise and that promise was broken, that might be I don't know.
So kind of like scheduling this for 9:30 and getting started at 9:50.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then whether like what your reason is for being late, I think can also weigh into it. Like, were you late because you were just lazy and didn't get up, or were you late because you had to save a dog from a burning building? I think the reason matters too.
I had to let my dog in from the rain. Does that count?
Oh,
yeah. I wish you had thought about our excuse prior to us having this question.
Yeah, that would have been good.
Let's get our excuse prepared ahead of time.
Yeah,
and then we'd be lying, and that would be a sin.
Right.
So at least the fun thing about this in the end is, why is it saying the video starts in 3 minutes? That's okay. Facebook, I don't like you, and I don't like your interaction with StreamYard. So, but to keep the promise, here's that introduction. Hopefully everybody will be able to hear it. Hope y'all are ready for this. Well, it wanted to play. Man, it's just going to be that kind of night.
I could probably just go ahead and do it.
All right. You try sharing because mine is not liking it at all for some reason.
I'll tell you what. You roll the intro, and if I can talk during the intro, I'll do our... because it's basically my voice saying our motto.
All right, let's see. I can roll the intro video. Let me see. I don't know if you can talk over that, though.
Yeah.
Ooh, let me see if it'll let you talk.
We're making this up on the fly, folks.
All right, we're going to try this, and we're going to see if it works. This is just experimental at this point. So kind of like this will be our experimental album. So I'm going to try and unmute you after we get this started here.
Okay, we are live.
We are.
Hmm. Yeah, that didn't work so great either. We tried. Why didn't you say anything, Joe?
Because I'm shy.
Oh. You should have told me that before we went into rolling that. All right. Let's try one last effort. Then we will move on with the retrospective. Here we go.
Oh.
And roll. Don't. A little quiet, but I heard that. Do you hear that, Clinton?
I heard it. It was definitely quiet.
In a world of celebrity apologists, we are a small-time voice. We're making a big-time noise for the gospel of Christ. Bringing you the best Christian apologist you've never heard of, we are the Mentionables.
That was clearer, more louder.
So that was the first official intro, right?
More or less, yeah. It contained our original motto, which is small time voice, big time noise. And I'll explain that as I explain our origins.
And that's exactly the plan for tonight. So tonight we'll dive in. We'll discuss looking back over the last few years and well over 100 episodes of podcast, live streaming, video cast, all that stuff.
Podcast-wise, right at about 100 episodes, which is why we opted to do the... And some of those episodes were like little teaser clips or commercials, so... But 100 episodes, technically, yes. So this will be our 102nd episode, because I just noticed we were at 100 episodes when I posted the 101st. You see, the Mentionables used to be a podcast. Way back in the day, before the advent of video podcasts, or whatever we call this. I still upload our video sessions as podcasts when I get around to it, which may be like the really significant ones, but the ones where it's like, just take a question or let's review this YouTube video, those tend to slip under the radar and not get posted as podcasts. But it's still out there, and I still know of at least 2 people who only listen to it as podcasts. So,
Okay.
Hey, that's not a bad thing.
No.
If we hadn't had any listeners on the podcast to start off with, we never would have gotten this far.
That's right.
yep, that's true. Sadly, because we're doing so much, I don't get to edit the podcast the way I used to. And I really enjoyed editing the podcast because I would put sound effects in and do funny gags in the middle of them and all kinds of fun stuff like that. And I miss that, but I just, between working 2 jobs and taking PhD courses and managing the Mentionables, I've kind of had to skip the editing thing.
It's overrated, as anybody who watched the last 8 minutes of this thing will tell you.
And all 8 minutes,
probably
we'll make
asleep
it to the
now.
podcast.
Oh boy, fair enough. Hey, that's the fun of doing these live shows, though. You never know what's going to happen, and you get to watch us screw up. So, I mean, between that and the nerdcore apologetics you get, I mean, what can you possibly want more? So you want to take us through a little bit of introduction now that we're like 100 episodes in, catch up some people who may have came in late in terms of, in the last year and a half, and found the show since then, or since we've been on YouTube doing this way, and just take us through kind of how this whole thing started.
Sure. So anybody who watches / listens to the Mentionables will notice that there's sort of a rotating cast of people that sort of migrate in and out over time. And, occasionally we'll get an old character like Nick pop back in briefly, tell a few jokes, drop out for a year or two, that kind of thing. So I'm pretty much the only consistent. I can't say I've been here for every single episode, but most episodes. So the Mentionables, how did we get started? So I began my apologetics career, if so it can be called, as a Christian journalist. And I worked for a smaller news publication called The Examiner. The Examiner was one of these online news organizations like BuzzFeed or one of these. But they had a unique model of news, which was that they didn't hire any staff. They had no team. They worked completely off of freelancers, and the freelancers got paid per click for their articles. Now, that meant that the freelancers ended up writing clickbaity type articles because they wanted to get the clicks. And so the Examiner had to kind of go in and interview with that stuff. But the other model of the Examiner was that they had a writer on every topic under the sun. Like there would be a single writer that would write about nothing but a particular politician, So this is the writer for the governor of California, and the only thing they write on is what's going on with the governor of California. So I was the Christian apologetics writer because they covered every topic. They had a paranormal writer. They had an atheist writer. So again, they covered all the bases. And so as the Christian apologetics news writer, Christian apologetics is not a topic that sort of lends itself to news reporting. They aren't starting wars. They aren't, with the exception of recent events, there's not a whole lot of news there. So most of what I did was reviews. I reviewed books, and I reviewed podcasts, and I would interview other individuals who were involved in apologetics. One of my better interviews was with J. Warner Wallace, who at that time was very up and coming. He was a police officer with a little podcast on the side called Please Convince Me. And so I managed to get a hold of him and do a little interview and print it up. And then he became kind of a big time guy. I'm saying all of this to say this. I interviewed small time people, and as a result, I got to see some very talented individuals who were just doing a podcast or writing a blog or something like that. And as you begin to work in that field, eventually you get to this idea where, like, you know what? I'd like to actually participate in a conference, maybe even start a conference. And I'm sure we've all had that thought at some point. And so in my head, I was like, you know what I'd do with a conference? I would not bring in a big guy. I would not go after a J. Warner Wallace or a some other guy, William Lane Craig, or one of these big guys. Instead, I would grab these bloggers and these podcasters that I interview that have some talent to them, and I'd do a conference with those guys. It would be awesome, and I'd call them the Mentionables, because I've mentioned them in my articles. So that was the idea, and it was just the sort of thing that had been floating around in my head for a while. And then I had a major surgery, and I did not know if I would still be able to return to work. I would pretty much be stuck at home behind my computer doing freelance work, and that was it. And so as a potential freelancer, permanent freelancer, I was trying to raise my profile online so as to get more work. And in order to sort of raise your profile in the internet area, you have to post constantly. No matter what, like every thought that comes into your head, you just need to put it up and post so that these feeds are active and they're getting more, hitting the algorithms and being broadcast across the internet. So I was trying to do that. And as a result, at one point, I put out this idea I'd had about the mentionables. It was just a joke pretty much, but I had tagged some of these people that I thought were that I had been impressed with during my brief career as a freelance apologetics writer. And the ones that I had tagged were Nick and Tyler and Caleb. Not Caleb, I'm sorry. It's another C. It's not Caleb. It's not Clinton. It's
Christopher?
Chad.
No, Chad. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Chad Gross. I had actually interviewed face to face because he lives in the same state I do. So I tagged a couple of these guys, and I was just letting them in on the joke, and they got together on the thread and they started talking, and they're like, "Yeah, let's go ahead and do this thing." And that conversation got many, many pages long, as the joke sort of turned into an idea and then a serious discussion. And so I was like, yeah, this is taking up quite a bit of this particular thread that I put out. Let's start a Facebook group. Then we can have the conversation there. So I went in to start a Facebook group, and like a knucklehead, I started a Facebook page instead, because there's a difference. So without intending to, I had given us a front on Facebook for an organization that essentially didn't exist yet. And so that was exciting. And, we had a impromptu team at that point. And so I let them all be administrators on the page, and then I made a web page. And so they started kind of talking about doing a podcast. Again, this was not my initiative. That was something, they started. And there were one of our members at that point was a guy named Neil Hess. And Neil was, among other things, a professional voice. Well, I could say actor. He did voiceovers, he did commercials, he did audiobooks, that kind of thing. And so he had all the equipment, all the sound equipment and everything. So he started the podcast for us, and he lasted, I don't know, like 3 episodes. And then he dropped out, and I was the person left standing. Now, I want to make something clear. I did not intend to be the leader of anything. That was not my intention. I just put out an idea out there. But, pretty soon I'm managing the podcast and the web page and, the conferences. We did. Oh, yeah, that was another thing. I wasn't intending to actually do a conference. That wasn't a thing. But I mentioned this kind of cool thing that was happening to a friend of mine. He's like, talk to my church.
Wait, you mentioned it?
I did. It was very mentionable. Yeah. That is a ongoing joke and not a very funny one, but we do it anyway. So I had a friend. I told him that this was a thing that was happening that I was kind of excited about. And, he got back to me later that day. He's like, yeah, I talked to our church. You've got a conference. I was like, oh, that happened, huh? So we did that, and that was fun. And then, I had initially thought, hey, let's just keep the team at like 5, because adding more people to a team gets a little inflated. And then what? You're going to a conference, you've got 32 speakers. It doesn't work. 5 speakers is plenty. We'll keep it at that. But more people kept approaching me/us about this. And eventually I was like, well, let's start a network. We don't all have to be on a core team. We can have a number of people involved and, promote them without making them, a core part of the group. And that worked out okay for a little while, but then it turned into what we are now, which is sort of a rotation of individuals that get involved at some point. So we wrote the Mentionable project in, I believe, 2018. I think that's when it got published. Again, the Mentionable project was just one of those things that sort of floated out as an idea. I don't even know who floated the article to us. But we decided to respond to this article of 30-ish questions to ask Christians atheist questions, critical questions, skeptical questions. And then 5 of us got involved in answering them. And I was like, hey, why don't we put these answers together? And, that's, let's see, what is it? 5 times 30 is, it's quite a few. 150 answers. And so we did that, and I got us a publisher, but the publisher turned out to be kind of, what's a polite way of saying this? Nuts, crazy. And, he wanted
to their credit, to think about publishing us, you'd have to be just a little bit that way.
Yeah. So yeah, he wanted us to sign these statements of faith and everything, and his ideas surrounding faith were a little fringe, I suppose. And so ultimately, the Mentionables as a team elected not to do that, and as a result, we ended up publishing online as an ebook. But we have a network member now who will do print versions of the book for us on a basis of per order. And so you can order a print copy of the book on our website. And then Caleb and I split off and did the children's book. Now, the children's book, I think, was a brilliant idea. The reason we wrote it is that I was invited to set up a table at a church event, essentially. And they told me, hey, we got a lot of kids attending, bring material for them. See, the thing is, between the number of us, we had published maybe 5 books total, but they weren't really geared towards children. So I was like, hey, guys, let's do the thing with the stuff, but do it for children. And nobody responded except for Caleb. Caleb helped me out with that one. The children's book is basically taking actual questions that children have asked. And children actually ask some pretty hard questions. Harder than most adults sometimes. And so Caleb and I tackled several actual human being questions that we gathered from children. And they were good questions. And we wrote a book that had, each question had 3 answers. One was an answer for a young child. How best to answer this question for a young child who's asking it, like a, 4 to 7-year-old, something like that. And then the second answer is for a more mature child, say between 10 and 13. And then the third was for an adult, right? We did an adult application for.
Yeah, like parents' application.
Yeah. Because again, these are insightful questions. So they had adult application to them. And it's a pretty cool booklet. I think it's still good for kids. And it's also something you can order from the Mentionables website. So, yeah, that happened. And, of course, as time went on, there were certain network members that sort of migrated into the core team and certain core team members that migrated out. And so currently, I would say our core is myself, Caleb, Clinton, maybe Mark, and I guess Nick to a degree.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. Let's see, that's the 3 of us and 2 more. Yeah, all right. So, yeah, I think our core group has always sort of achieved homeostasis at about 5 active people.
For what it's worth, Maverick and Steve have put in a lot of content recently too. So
That's true.
As network members, they're pulling their weight.
Yeah, they really have. And I appreciate that from them. We don't know if they're going to pull a Clinton Wilcox and sign in entirely. Not that, okay, just to be clear, every member of the Mentionables, with the possible exception of myself, also does their own apologetics ministry. And that's part of the model of the Mentionables is we're getting these names out there. They're mentionable. That's the core idea. We don't have celebrity apologists among us. We have, I don't know if lay apologist is the correct term, because I know Clinton at the very least, it works, does his work in apologetics. But, again, small time, let's say, under the radar, grassroots apologists.
I think grassroots is a good way to describe it.
All right. So in a sense, the Mentionables is a grassroots movement. And part of the purpose is to give these people a platform and a coalition to work together to, get their names out there, not out of there.
Right.
Stand down and stand by.
Freudian slip there. Freudian slip.
Yeah. So Clinton runs his ministry. Well, he's involved with a pro-life ministry, whose name I don't remember right now.
Well, it's Life Training Institute, and
Okay.
it's not my ministry. It's Scott Glusendorf, who's the president of Life Training Institute. But I do run a podcast through LTI, but the podcast is sort of my own.
Yep. And Caleb manages like 5 different apologetics things at the same time.
Not quite, but something close to that, I guess.
Yeah. As for myself, I no longer write for the Examiner because it went belly up and doesn't exist any longer. Apparently, it wasn't a feasible model of online news. So that went away in about 2016. And so right now I do personal research and I do the Mentionables, and that's about it. I don't really have any side projects going on beyond switching sides and Mentionables. So that's it. That's the history of the Mentionables, more or less.
I think that did a good job covering it. I can't think of any major things you left out there. So,
yeah. When Caleb first got involved in the podcast, one of his first things that he did was to grill me on the history of the Mentionables. So, I've told this story to him at least twice now.
yeah, fun story. So this whole thing literally started as a joke, which
Correct.
is,
Yes.
pretty ironic considering how unfunny the show itself is.
So at several points my wife has said, you should change the name away from the Mentionables. It's sort of a narcissistic kind of name, and it kind of stuck. So I don't know, if I had to do it over again, I probably would have named it Mentionable, not the Mentionables, because rather than focusing on the individuals and the team, it would focus on the message.
Yeah, I like that because the message is very mentionable.
Right.
I think there's this kind of idea behind it too that's kind of a way I've kind of thought about the name a little bit too. Is every church really should have somebody who's mentionable as an apologist who can help answer those difficult questions. Pastors are more involved with pastoral care a lot of the times in dealing with counseling and caring for people and people's needs. And so to have somebody within, local churches who can handle that apologist role to help build up the rest of the body, I think is something that's very important. I'd love to know that, every church has somebody that is mentionable for helping with those questions too.
Yeah, and that was the original idea behind the network, was to create a catalog of individuals who had that apologetics knowledge so that anyone can go in the catalog, locate their local apologist, contact them, and set up a conference, ask them questions. And the other thing was the catalog, which still exists, has the areas in which these apologists specialize. And so if you had a podcast and you wanted a guest that specialized in a particular area, you could get on there, find apologists and their speciality, and get that information. Right. And so there's the map that you can see. The red spots are the core team and the yellow spots are the network members.
Wait, it just occurred to me. So we're really just doxing apologists, and that's like the main thing we do at this point.
Now, obviously I give the area in which they live. And okay, so yeah, each of those spots on the map is a city, not a address. So it says that this apologist lives in this general area. You can go to that point and all you'll get is a city. I don't know if that qualifies as doxing.
Fair enough.
But,
it was just a joke, but
okay.
it fell pretty flat to like most of them do. So,
this is like one of those comedies similar to The Office, where the comedy really it occurs in the awkwardness of the joking. It's hilarious. You just have to have a certain kind of sense of humor.
Yeah, a very certain niche kind of apologetics nerdcore sense of humor with a dash of, I don't know.
Something.
And so where can people find all those resources as well as the network and all that good stuff?
So the website is thementionables.org. I'm going to repeat that. Mentionables.org. And on that website, it's pretty intuitive. You can find the menu and it'll have the resources, which include the books that we've written. And when I say we, I would say of the core team, maybe like 3 of us had books published prior to the creation of the Mentionables. And then we've got the Mentionables project and When Children Mention God, which is the children's book that Caleb and I wrote, all of which are available under our resources. And then you have the network, and you can go to that catalog and you have, the general area in which these apologists reside and an email address and, their website if they have one. And their specialty. So you can look through the catalog and find these apologists that exist within the network and locate them for whatever it's worth. And then we have blogs, news, which are contributed to by various members of the team. And then, I don't know, there's other stuff in there.
Yeah, lots of fun stuff to find if you dig down deep anyway. So
yeah, the podcast is technically on there, but I don't ever keep it up to date. It's better just to subscribe to us on Podbean or watch the YouTube channel. Or, follow us on Facebook. All the podcasts, as they are released, get published automatically to our Twitter feed and to our YouTube feed and to our Facebook feed. So if you follow us on social media, you're not going to miss any of that stuff. And of course, when we have a new blog or news article that goes up, that's published on our Twitter and Facebook feed. So you don't actually have to visit the website to keep current. But in terms of getting the resources or contacting any of us, the website is probably the best way to do that.
So the picture on the website, is that a takeoff on the Untouchables?
Kind of, maybe. The pictures have rotated almost as frequently as our motto. So our original motto was small time voice, big time noise. Which was a reference to the fact that these were sort of under the radar apologists that coming together were given a voice. And then we also had the motto, many voices, one message, which, it's a similar idea. We're all contributing our specialities, I don't know, specialties, to the project, but, the message is the same, Many voices, one message. We tried Men on a Mission, which is kind of like that image, but didn't
We're on a
really
mission, bud.
we had like 15 mottos at one point. And the image that I created rotated about as often as the mottos did. But I've gotten over that. I was very much into the photoshopping at the time that the group was created, so much so that I rotated out the motto and the image almost daily.
Yeah, we've had quite a few of those.
Yep.
Yeah.
So aside from the name change, if you were to go back, let's say 98 episodes ago, 99 episodes ago, if you were going to change things or do something, like what would it be?
Man, the entire journey has been very enjoyable. So based on the resources we had available to us at the time, I'm happy with everything that we've done so far. And some of the cohesion has developed over time, including the specialties that we each bring to the project and how we parse those out. Our involvement in sort of the video broadcasts that we're doing now and so forth. Those just were not available at the time that we began. Those gradually developed over time. So, if we could go back and start with the amount of technology and expertise that we have now, that'd be nice, but that's not realistic.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
And Clinton, how about what? This is a little different question, but what were?
I'll give you a little bit of a different answer then.
All right, what were some of your initial thoughts about the group, or why did you think this was something worth getting involved in? Because it was clearly an awful idea.
Actually, contrary to what you say, I actually thought it was a really good idea when I first heard about it. Oh, the Mentionables, that a group of people who know their stuff but don't get the work that the well-known apologists do. So I thought that was a really good idea of bringing those kinds of apologists together. So yeah, and that's really all there is to it. I just thought it was a good idea, and so eventually I worked my way into the good graces of Joel Furches, and he offered to let me join the team.
Well, it was largely due to meeting you at the conference and seeing you in action. And then when after the conference, you were volunteering for involvement in a lot of the things, that really endeared you to me, the fact that you were actually putting work in.
Well, yeah.
As part of the network
Right.
idea was to, as these projects come along, we release them to the network. And the idea was, hey, all of these people in the network have specialties. Specialties. Boy, I have got to learn to use that word. Specialties. They have specialties, and we've got a mobile force here. We should be able to accomplish quite a bit when we put out, and whoever is able to chip in does. And that doesn't happen. Again, it's the same 5 people that chip into everything. That's about it. So the fact that you were one of those 5, Clinton, was very special to me. I enjoyed that.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. No, if you're, I figure you got to put in the work if you want to, if you want to be a part of it. So.
Yeah, and you do. Really good.
Well, that's what's been fun about it for me too. Is when I initially heard about it, it was just like, I don't know, this would be something that could be fun to work on some projects with some other people and to just be involved in doing some of this kind of stuff. And that's what drew me to it too.
Yeah, and I was really looking forward to getting to host the Mentionables conference last year. Unfortunately, COVID happened, and so that wasn't a possibility. But hopefully we'll be able to do another conference in the future.
Yeah, so the Mentionables have had 2 conferences. The first conference was in Caleb's stomping ground down in North Carolina, and Caleb lives in Virginia, but it wasn't too far from him.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, but we had it in North Carolina at the time, and that was fun. And it was a very small church, and there were like 2 people that showed up, but we got some good audio and video out of it, and we were able to release that later. But most importantly, we actually all met face to face, and we clicked instantly. It was an amazing experience just because we showed up and we immediately were a team. You know, all of the cohesion, all of the camaraderie, all the gears met together, and bam, it was instant success in terms of working together. And then the same thing happened when we did our next conference in Texas, hosted by Mark Lambert.
Which is the one I made it to.
Right. And that's the one that Clinton came in. And Clinton, I would say the same thing happened. I don't know what your impression was, but it seemed to me.
I had that same impression. You know, everyone was real easy to get along with and work with. Yeah.
Now, because that one had a debate between Tyler Vela and Aaron Ra, or however he likes to pronounce it, it got more attention from the atheist crowd. Now, there's the interesting thing is that for each of our conferences, we've shown up one evening. We've done a panel, sort of a question and answer panel, and one where we sort of introduced ourselves and had some discussion. And that's the Friday night. And then Saturday morning throughout the day, we had our speakers and our breakout sessions. And we managed to have a debate on actually at both conferences. The first conference was Tyler Vela and Watkins. What's his first? Benjamin Watkins. And they did a debate, sort of a problem of evil type thing. And then our second conference was, again, Tyler Vela and Aaron Ra. And Aaron's kind of a celebrity in atheist circles. And as a result, we had more atheists to show up than we did Christians, which was fun. But yeah, that happened.
Well, hey, any day you can get an atheist in a church is a good day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they didn't burst into flames, which was surprising to me.
Right.
So yeah, that was fun. And so we were slated to have Conference 2020. So that we had 2018, 2019, and we were going to do Conference 2020 in California, which was a rotation from East Coast, Central, and West Coast. And that was sort of the idea we wanted to follow in the future, was to sort of rotate it from East to center of the country to West, because, and I don't know, maybe someday in the distant future, we won't all have to wear masks and isolate ourselves to an exceptional degree, and we can start doing conferences again.
Right.
But the way our conferences have worked is panel on a Friday night. Saturday morning, we have a debate. 2 really good debates so far. Those debates are available on our YouTube channel to, if you want to refer back to those to watch them. And also on the podcast. Each of those debates have been featured on episodes of the podcast. So if you're interested, they're really good debates. I would go and check them out. But anyway, we've had the debate, and then after that, we've had talks and breakout sessions. The second conference didn't really have any breakout sessions. We had a number of speakers limited to the degree that we could put them all on stage rather than having to break out at some point. All really good talks, very low turnout for the conferences, but honestly, I wasn't terribly disappointed because it was so good and we were able to get material that we could get out to the public in other ways. Clinton was involved in one of the conferences, so he can give his impression. Caleb has been involved in no conferences, so we're all disappointed in him.
Yeah.
Especially since he could easily have attended our first conference.
Well, easily is not just a matter of distance always.
Yeah, well, I mean, North Carolina is a bit of a drive anyway from Virginia. I know from experience because I go out to the March for Life in Washington, D.C. every year, and I usually stay in Falls Church, Virginia, and then I take a Greyhound to north to Charlotte, North Carolina, because I stay with my friend Devin Palou, who lives in Rock Hill, South Carolina. So, a little bit of a drive, but,
Oh, look who's bragging about having friends.
Yeah, we don't do that kind of thing around here. Come on.
Oh, yeah? Okay, my apologies. I thought the conference, was a good experience. I'm pretty terrible with advertising, so I have no idea, how to get more people to attend. But, as far as the content goes, I thought the content was really good, and I enjoyed the debate between Tyler and Aaron Ra.
Yeah, our
And,
debates have actually been pretty well organized.
Yeah, and I appreciated getting to meet everyone in person, or at least everyone who was able to attend. I remember besides Joel and myself, we had John Dunbar there, and of course we had Mark there because he, lives there in near Waco. I forget where exactly it was, but actually, I got to attend Mark's church that Sunday too, and he let me do the music for the service.
That's one unique thing that all three of us have in common is that we've all interacted with John at some point.
Yeah, right. And for anyone who's watching who doesn't know John Dunbar, he's the guy in the opening credits who never appears on the actual show.
Yeah, he's his most famous. His contribution is the line, "And we are live."
That's right. Yeah, I was trying to remember what that line was. I couldn't remember.
Yeah. No, that's his famous line, the one he'll go down in history for, saying, "And we are live."
Right.
That's his extent of contribution toward apologetics.
Yeah. So when you next time we do a conference, assuming John attends it, you should put that under his name. Quote, "And we are live," end quote.
Yeah. No, Tyler has insisted that he MC all of our conferences after
John
he did
Dunbar?
the first one. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and Tyler's like, "Nope, you have to MC them all."
Right.
And what Tyler says goes.
Okay. And so, whereabouts does John Dunbar live?
North Carolina.
Oh, North Carolina. Okay. Oh, so that was actually local to him then.
Yeah.
That first conference.
He was the one. He was the one that organized our first conference, which is also why he MC'd the. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you said Caleb was the one who organized it because it wasn't that far from him.
Nope.
No way.
I said he could have attended it, and he said, transportation-wise, that might have been feasible, but life-wise,
Interestingly enough, though, I met John like 2 days after I signed up to be on the team. We just happened to be at the same conference and overheard him talking, and I'm like, "Wait, what are you talking about?" And we bumped into each other just a matter of a few days. We became acquaintances. So
okay, yeah, there's always a possibility if we do a conference and somebody in the Mentionables can't attend, we could always Skype them in to do a talk.
Yeah, technology is amazing, especially after the lockdown, and it's accelerated to the point where we can have remote and long distance methods of doing things.
Yeah. I'll give my dog another cameo appearance on the podcast because someone appreciated the cameo last time and left a comment. So
it's way more popular when we have dogs or children on the podcast. It just makes something worth watching versus just listening to. So
now she's a Chihuahua, but I actually think she looks a lot like a gremlin.
Yeah, there's like a little gizmo.
Maybe. Yeah.
Just it's more like a Magua. Don't get her wet and feed her after
no
midnight.
feeding after midnight. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Should be all right. So let's talk a little bit about the specialists that we have on the team. So of course, Clinton is probably our most specialized specialist of all specialties, given that he works in a very sort of focused field of apologetics almost exclusively. But Clinton, you're kind of also getting into philosophy and trying to become a guru in that sense.
Well, yeah, not specifically a guru in philosophy per se. I enjoy learning about philosophy, and I enjoy the questions they pose. But bioethics is really the field of philosophy that has interested me the most. Not just because I started off doing work in the pro-life movement, but also because a lot of the questions posed in bioethics are really interesting to me. Questions such as personal identity, like what makes us the same individual from one moment to the next, and what is it that ensures that the person who falls asleep is the same person who wakes up the next morning, even though I've completely lost consciousness. Questions like that I find to be very interesting, and that's questions like that have a lot of are very relevant to bioethics and questions of abortion and euthanasia and things like that. So I have studied other philosophy because I'm a Thomist, and I arrive at my pro-life views through a Thomistic metaphysics. So I do study philosophy so that I can speak intelligently on Thomism and things like virtue ethics and things like that. But yeah, bioethics is really the area that I'm really specializing in.
He keeps throwing out the T word. I'm not sure. Can we get that beeped out? That's a discussion I'd love to have with you someday about the what makes you the same individual over time, because there's a very interesting behaviorist answer to that question. The more I read and hear Skinner, the more I think he's more of a philosopher than a psychologist.
Is that B.F. Skinner?
Yes, B.F. Skinner.
Okay.
If you ever have a chance to read his book, which is Human Behavior, then I would recommend it, because he does a lot of philosophy in that book, which was very interesting to me.
Okay.
Which is not what I expected when I sat down to read it. It was assigned for a class that I was taking, and I was thinking, oh, yeah, psychology, whatever.
Yeah.
But the more I study it, the more I think that psychology trumps philosophy.
Oh, why is that?
Because because philosophy spends a lot of time talking about who we are as humans beings, and what rationality is, and what kind of purpose we have to go towards, and all of which I can answer from a psychological standpoint, especially from a behaviorist standpoint. So some philosopher will say, what makes a man a man? And I'll be like, well, here's the response to that from a psychological viewpoint. But yeah, the ones that the psychological questions that impress me are the first psychological questions, the ones that the ancient Greek philosophers were dealing with. Questions more about the nature of reality and rationality. As philosophy developed over history, it started asking more about the nature of knowledge and how we, come to know a thing, and how we actualize ourselves through behaviors, all of which to me are more psychological questions than they are philosophical questions. But yeah,
well, philosophy is all the word philosophy just means is a lover of wisdom, and so things like psychology and science, because philosophy has generally been seen as it's basically the most fundamental way to think, even over science. In fact, science used to be considered natural philosophy, and so because science has severe limitations, like it can only investigate the physical universe. It can't investigate the metaphysical realm, which is why for example, when people say that science has disproven Aristotle's metaphysics, well, that's false. Science can't disprove that. His physics has been overturned and supplemented or replaced by more modern views, like first Isaac Newton's view of the universe and then Albert Einstein's. But these questions posed by philosophy, I wouldn't say it's necessarily that psychology trumps philosophy, but it's more like these philosophical questions we have can utilize scientific fields such as psychology to clarify and help us come to some sort of answer regarding these questions. So I would say it actually, it helps us come to an answer, not necessarily that it replaces or trumps philosophy in that sense.
No, philosophy asks, what is the nature of reality? And psychology says, I know why you're asking that question. I can explain what motivates you as a human being to ask that question.
Okay, so how does that trump philosophy, though? Because you can know why I'm asking the question, but that doesn't negate the importance of the question.
Oh, you can explain the behavior of the philosopher.
Wait a minute. Wait. Hold on. Before we go any further with this, I've got to play this.
Devil's Advocate!
All right, you may continue.
Right.
So we were talking about specialities. Originally, when we had planned the podcast, again, it wasn't my suggestion, but when somebody suggested we do a podcast, I was a podcast listener. That was a thing that I did, especially writing news in the area of apologetics. I would review things, and podcasts were among the things that I would review. But I also wanted to get news about apologetics, and so I followed apologetic podcasts, but I also followed atheist podcasts because both were relevant to the field, I felt. And so one atheist podcast that I followed was the spiritual successor to Ben Watkins' podcast. Ben Watkins hosts a podcast called Real Atheology, and the spiritual predecessor to that was a podcast called Reasonable Doubts, which was playing off of Reasonable Faith, William Lane Craig's podcast. And so the structure of their podcast was that they would have various sections that they would do based on the interests of the panel. And the sections were sort of consistent. They would not have the same sections for each episode, but, in an episode, they might talk about psychology of religion. They might talk about, they did this fun little episode where they would review some mythical god from, ancient mythology or history and say, do a sort of, this god is as false as the other. It was kind of like, sort of the outsider's test type thing where they were showing that, all gods are equally ridiculous, but it also gave them a chance to talk about mythology, which is fun. And so I figured, hey, we could structure it similar to that. We never did. Maybe one episode, 2 episodes, we did that. But for me, I had thought, well, one of the segments we could do occasionally would be on psychology because, hey, that's sort of my stomping ground. That's where I'm at. And that itself is a funny backstory because I was not interested in psychology. That is not where I saw myself in 15 years when I was in college or high school. I was interested in science. I was just interested in creativity, all of these other things, but psychology was, I ended up accidentally getting a degree in psychology from the bachelor's level, which is a fun story in and of itself. And that was not interesting to me at that time either, because again, accidentally, I didn't want it. I didn't need it. But then as an apologist, I was following atheists, especially on the Reasonable Doubts podcast. And they had a doctor of psychology there who did religious psychology or psychology of religion. And so as I'm writing as a apologist, a lot of what I'm writing is addressing the stuff that this guy is putting out. And I had enough of a background in psychology to understand what he was talking about and to sort of critically assess it. And so by the time I joined the Mentionables, I was interacting with psychology of religion quite a bit. And I had the basic rudimentary background to understand it as I studied it and did sections on it. And then, history goes on, and here I'm pursuing a PhD in psychology. So
Yeah, funny how it works
specialties.
out.
Yeah, that was sort of the specialty that I brought to the team quite unintentionally. And then Caleb came on board, and he brought on his own specialties, one in particular. What's your specialties, Caleb?
Yeah, so I was a psychology guy in school too.
Yeah.
And that got me real far because now I'm managing psychologist, which is interesting. But yeah, so the psychology took me a different route and got me real interested in cults. So I spend a lot of time studying cults compared to your average churchgoer or apologist, I guess. So cults are kind of my specialty at this point. Cults and fringe Christianity and stuff like QAnon. Oh, they're probably going to cut the podcast again for that. So, but yeah, all that
have
stuff.
to be careful when you mention QAnon, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, so I took that particular episode and put it as one of our premium podcasts versus our Podbeam podcasts. So I don't know if that's going to be a problem or not.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, Caleb brought now Caleb, when he came on board, he was very interested in, saying, hey, I've got a psychology background. That's a thing. And I've always felt bad that, I just talk about psychology. I might be overshadowing Caleb since that's the thing that he brought. And it wasn't necessarily the thing I wanted to bring. It's just, it's what I had in my pocket. But hey, it's allowed Caleb and I to be conversant, and that's been special. It's given us a connection,
Yeah. It's been good. I've enjoyed it. I've never felt overshadowed or bothered by any of that. I mean, it is what it is. You're more on the academic side of things, and I'm more on kind of the application, taking this stuff, putting in leadership, and different things along those lines. So,
yeah, to be fair, most of my career, I've been putting my specialty to application with children, specifically at risk or troubled children who have emotional or behavioral problems. So I do some of the clinical side stuff, but I'm really interested in academics. It's a thing that I like. So I've been really recently, I've been looking into street epistemology, because street epistemology claims to be a method of deconverting Christians, and it sort of flows in my general area. And I've watched them in action, and man, I want to talk about that, because the interaction between street epistemology and the stuff that I study is pretty significant. But that's something that we didn't intend to get into in this episode, so I can put that in my back pocket and we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I'd love to be in on that conversation. So
yeah, can't wait.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
No, you go ahead. I would take us on a rabbit trail.
Yeah, so I was talking about specialties. Of course, we've got Nick Peters, and he was a real find in terms of getting him on the team, because his specialty tends to be in New Testament criticism, and specifically in the area of the resurrection. His father-in-law, of course, is a famous professor who talks about the resurrection. Oh, I don't know.
You need me to name drop here?
If you could, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, if anybody's ever heard of Michael Licona, Dr. Michael Licona.
I don't know. What does he do?
Something about the resurrection, apprenticed under Habermas, whoever that guy is.
Yeah.
So Nick has, to a degree, apprenticed under both Habermas and Licona, and as a result, he's got a decent amount of knowledge in that area.
Now, Nick, doesn't he? Was it that he does affirm something or doesn't affirm something? I can't remember.
I don't know. I haven't heard him affirm anything today.
It's a trivial, I don't know, something in it. I don't know. It beats me.
Yeah.
It's not really important to him.
All right.
Yeah.
Just checking.
So yeah, Nick Peters, it's great to have him on board. He's a very well informed biblical scholar and has a great connection to the arguments for the resurrection. So when things come at us from that angle, he's very decent to step up and address those. So it was good at getting him on the team. So altogether, between those individuals, we have a pretty well-rounded team, and I'm very happy about that. The other thing about the Mentionables that's important to me is the fact that we don't all come from the same church backgrounds and the same theological perspectives on things. But that's important. It's important because listeners, people who interact with us, people who ask us questions, get to see some of the diversity in thought in the church. And we can show that as Christians, we can be cohesive without necessarily agreeing on everything.
Right.
And by having these conversations, by showing the different perspectives, we allow individuals to think these issues through themselves and make informed decisions. And there's no conflict within our team, even though we don't always agree on all the issues. We still agree on mere Christianity.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I think when you get a team approach like this versus hearing maybe from an individual, it adds that aspect of, I think, being less likely to just pick something up and kind of mirror it. I mean, we've all done it in one situation or another. We watch a video on something, we mention it to somebody later, and we kind of mirror what the speaker said in terms of it being something that we've maybe picked up because we were convinced by it. But when you're getting different angles and perspectives coming at something, I really do think it helps people think about it a little bit more independently than if you're just listening to somebody teach on something.
Yeah, and I don't think our team has any clones. None of us is a William Lane Craig clone. None of us is a Gary Habermas clone, and that includes Nick. Nick is an independent thinker. He can put things together on his own. He doesn't always agree with those that he studied under, and that's fine. So yeah, each of us is unique, and we're not just taking the words of William Lane Craig and putting them out of our mouths. We're unique thinkers and talented thinkers, and that's the reason that I wanted to get these particular people together as the Mentionables, even when it was just sort of a random idea that was floating around in my head. I liked it because there was diversity and unification within diversity. Kind of like a universe. I don't know.
Unidiversity.
Yeah, that's the one.
Hey, I like that word. I might use that.
Yeah.
We've got one more. Mark, what's Mark's specialty?
Mark is a pastor and a minister. So a lot of what he brings to the team is the ministerial aspect. He's got the pastoral approach. And that's good because apologetics often lacks that. Apologetics tends to be very appealing to the intellectual approach, but it does sometimes lack some of the heart. And Mark is not in any way uninformed in apologetics. He's not anti-intellectual or anything like that. He just is able to both speak to the mind and to the heart. And to have a heart on the team is essential.
Yeah, absolutely. Without a heart, the blood goes nowhere.
Yeah, you should write that down, man.
I may just do that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I, as part of the coursework that I do, I was reading a study that had been done. A really interesting study, by the way. It was looking at the sort of stereotype that Christians are kind of flimsy thinkers in comparison to atheists. Atheists are informed and educated, and they complex thinkers, versus Christians who are sort of simps and they're black and white thinkers and they're not able to. So I was looking at that stereotype, and to do so, they ran 3 different studies. They did one where they took Christian intellectuals from various points in history and atheist intellectuals from those same points in history, not necessarily that had interacted with each other, but were sort of iconic of religious and irreligious thinkers from that period in history. And then they ran them through an algorithm for complexity of thought, which I won't explain to you. It just shows the ability to, skip the black and white nature of thinking and incorporate various viewpoints and be able to suss through those viewpoints and come to some conclusions therefrom. And the less capable you are of viewing various viewpoints and expressing them in ways that coordinates them in a complex way, the lower you rate on this scale. So I told you I wouldn't explain it. I just explained it. Ha, joke's on you. Anyway, so that was the first one they did. The second one they did was they curated a bunch of essays from an organization that takes essays from people all over the world about core values and collects them. And it's a good tool for psychologists because you can gather these essays from any point in the time period they've been collecting them, from any category of people, and look at how core values are affected by culture and how they change over periods of history and so forth. So they pulled over 1,000 of these essays and then divided them up into essays that included religion as a core value and utilized sort of a Christian language, and those that did not. And then they ran them through this complexity analysis. And the last thing that they did was they took C.S. Lewis and they looked at his writings when he was an atheist, and then his writings when he was a Christian, and ran them through this complexity analysis. And I thought this was fascinating, especially the one with C.S. Lewis, because it did show an increase in complexity of thinking before and after he converted. So I wanted to get a hold of this tool because I thought it would be cool to have this algorithm to do, to involve in the work that I do. So I mentioned this to a very talented psychological Christian apologist. He works in psychology research, and he also speaks as a Christian apologist. And he's been out to Mark's church a couple of times to speak as well. Anyway, he and I have a working relationship. And I asked him, hey, do you ever do any work in this field with complexity of thought analysis? And I told him the tool. And he's like, no, but I can introduce you to the guy who wrote that paper. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. And so he did. And the guy has given me access to the tool, which is cool. But he also looked at my work and he says, if we were to apply complexity of thinking to these scenarios prior to the deconversion, it would prevent the deconversions. I was like, yeah, you might be onto something there. Anyway, I was telling that story for some purpose, and I've forgotten what it was. It'll come back to me.
That's an interesting one, though.
What's that?
I was just saying, I told you that story to tell you this story.
Yeah. I was getting it. That's literally what it was. I needed to tell you that story to make a point for another story. And I got so involved in what it was a fascinating tale to me that.
That seems to be how most of our stories go around here.
Yeah. Mostly mine, though. I'll own that.
Yeah. I'm not going to argue with that. Well, any other thoughts or questions or?
Well, let's talk about where we see the future of the Mentionables. Again, I'm the de facto leader of the group, which I never intended to be, but hey, I'm killing it here. Okay, so the future of the team. I can tell you what I think practically would be the future and what I would like to be the future. Um, Practically, I see it doing much what it's doing now. I see it as a rotation of individuals who are, are sort of small time apologists, to use the language that the original intro used. Um, of under the radar grassroots apologists. Um, and, as time has gone by, we've, I don't know if I want to say evolved, but we've changed because people's lives change. People rotate in and out, but we're such an open format that we allow for that kind of rotation. I honestly don't know whether that kind of thing is attractive or not attractive to listeners, because you could arguably make it attractive insofar as they get to hear new perspectives, new voices, and new interactions from various individuals who bring certain things to the table that may have been heard before. And of course, every group that we've had on the podcast has a different kind of chemistry, and that makes it an interesting conversation in and of itself. So that kind of rotation style might in fact be attractive to people. I don't know. But that's where I would see the thing going. And for instance, whereas I have been running the entire show since the beginning, Caleb has stepped up and helped out running aspects of the show. I mean, I still run the website. I still upload and handle the podcast. And to a great degree, I handle the social media feeds. Caleb has helped with scheduling in terms of getting the video feeds up, and he's managed a lot of the software and so forth for the video feeds. So he stepped up in that respect. So it's possible that leadership and management within the group may shift over time. So for instance, I said I didn't originally handle the podcast. That was another person, but that person stepped down after he had his first baby and got involved in fatherhood, and he's never sort of returned at any point since then. So that duty kind of fell upon my shoulders, and I had to handle it unprepared. But again, I killed it. And now to a degree, Caleb is handling at least the scheduling of the shows and getting the guests on and topics and things more so than I am. So it's possible that leadership might shift in some way within the group if it is to continue going. So as we rotate leaders and participants, the nature of the mentionables may change over time, but core nature, which is individuals who are not celebrity apologists, bringing various expertises to the table, will continue from there. So that's realistically where the mentionables will go in the future. What I would like to happen, in a dream scenario, we would be the next cross-examined, or the next reasonable faith, or one of these more established apologetics communities, and sort of go from there, bringing these small-time apologists and their specialties into the limelight, so that we can bring what is our passion as the primary aspect of our career. And I think that's sort of the underlying hope of anybody who's a hobbyist in one area or the other, is that their interest becomes their career. So, that's more of a pipe dream. I don't think that's a realistic one, but if we're talking about where we want to go in the future, I'd say that. All right, so that would be my vision for the future of the mentionables. Anybody else want to step in?
No, I like that. I think that's good. Only thing I would tag on is, I'd love to see, the network kind of expand as well, to be something where, we have more people out there. So it is a repository and a resource for people to find their local apologist and connect and have the resource that they need when they're having doubts.
The only thing is nobody's aware that resource exists. And I'm not sure how to make the public aware of that. because it does. We do have a network. And
Right.
we're pretty diverse. We've got the East Coast is pretty well covered. Our West Coast probably needs more apologists, and in the center of America,
especially because I'm leaving now. So
yeah, you're
'cause
headed to where again?
to New Mexico, and which is
Okay,
closer
so
to the center of the country. But yeah,
don't
'cause
worry,
I
the
was,
the country's poorly populated as well.
yeah, but I mean, I was pretty much the West Coast representation of the Mentionables. So
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So yeah, if we could get that resource out, then the expansion of the network and the involvement of the network might be better, or more of a core resource of the Mentionables. It might even become what the Mentionables is essentially a catalog of apologists and their specialties, which are available for the public to contact and utilize in whatever way is best for them.
Yeah.
So, a question kind of related to if somebody's listening to this, and what can listeners do to help with this kind of moving forward? Like, what are the ways they can contribute to the mission of the Mentionables?
Well, probably primarily to recommend the Mentionables in terms of maybe our podcast, maybe just the service that we offer in terms of the network. Hey, let people know that there's a network. If people are more aware that there is a catalog of apologists that they can go and take a look at, and then invite these apologists to speak or contact them in terms of a question that they might have. Just having people utilize the resource that we've provided would in and of itself make the project worthwhile. It's the answer that become a patron, support us. We can offer so much more if we're able to have the resources to back it. At this point, we have enough to support the website and the podcast, and that's, for the basic thing, that's fine. That's what we need, but we can always expand and become have better influence and better resources if we have those kinds of funds to do so. Now, that is the answer you get from every Christian ministry ever, is because Christianity and ministry as a beast operates off of donations. That we rarely produce resources that contribute to the free market that allow us to support ourselves in terms of, capitalism. Most of us have written some kind of book, and that's on the market somewhere. And but books are a poor source of income. No source of income at all. I've written one, and it's fun to have my name on Amazon, but that's about it.
Hmm.
But yeah, word of mouth. That'd be great.
Yes.
Yep, those subscriptions, those likes on the videos, they all help move us up in the algorithm. I noticed just recently that, even with our small ministry as it is, which I would consider it very small in terms of how far it reaches out, and yet still, over the last 90 days, we've had, 1.5 people, which I don't know how you get a half person, but 1.5 people, watching some of our content on an hourly basis. So that says something. Even something small like this, it does have a niche audience and group that's out there. And so, it's impressive to me that we even have that much reach.
Yeah, so our fanhood is small but loyal. The people that do follow us are very active on our various feeds. And many of them have actually voluntarily contributed to us. I don't want to know if the gentleman who has helped with sound, who has designed some of the audio for us, and certain times has even done audio edits on our podcast. He's been a huge supporter of us, and he volunteers services on a regular basis. I'd give him a shout out, but I don't know if he wants me to mention his name. But yeah, fantastic guy. Very helpful.
We are the Mentionables.
The gentleman that helps us with printing our book and other resources, he does so voluntarily, and it's been a huge help. So again, a lot of our I've had items mailed to me for free to support the Mentionables. The microphone that I'm speaking on right this moment, which is a pretty expensive piece of equipment, was donated to the Mentionables, as was the memory for my computer that allows me to edit our videos. So, yeah, we've got some very supportive and loyal fans, just not many of them.
Well, speaking of fans, we also have a lot of new subscribers in the last few days. So, giving a shout out to some of our newest ones. We've got Dr. John Smith, Chloe, Charlotte, Sayez, Cynthia, CJ, and more is a recent subscriber, as well as Samuel T, Andrew J. Lewis, D123, and Darwin TV are some of our recent subscribers. So thanks for subscribing on YouTube. It definitely helps to increase viewership and to help get this kind of stuff out there. So
I would have saved N more for the last person that you mentioned.
Yeah, that would have been good. They came up on the first, though. So
yeah. So yeah, and we've recently acquired a new patron, to whom I have given a shout out on our last live episode. So that's nice. So yeah, I mean we've been around for 4 years now. This year will be our 5th year, which I suppose is a milestone. And of the core members, I guess it's just me and Nick at this point. We're the only two that have stuck to it.
Well, with a sense of humor like we have, it's not for everybody long term.
No, and of course, again, the people we've recruited almost entirely have their own ministries and podcasts and things that they're devoted to. The Mentionables is simply something to whom they belong that allows them to get their name out of there and be in the catalog of apologists that are available for individuals to contact for various reasons. And that's largely why it exists. We're the Mentionables. They are established apologists, so to speak, who deserve a mention. And that's the model behind the Mentionables. We're not an independent ministry with individuals that belong just to the Mentionables. We're a coalition of independent apologists who are using this as a platform to get recognition for the types of work and the expertise they offer to the apologetics field. And so the fact that we've lost members is not surprising, because people move on in their own individual ministries. And I do not have a problem with that. It's fun while it lasts. It's really nice to see some of the faces that have rotated through, because they've brought a lot to the table, and they've, the material that we've produced in conjunction with them has been good material. I would encourage any new listeners, and apparently we've got new ones, to go into our back files, because it would be fun. I think you'd really enjoy seeing some of the interactions that have occurred in the past with different members when they've been on board. I can, for instance, recommend Chad Gross was a co-host with me for about half of 2018, during the summer especially, that we did a lot of episodes together, and that was a fun period.
Yeah, we've got quite a bit of material out there, either on the Podbean account or on YouTube. We've got a lot of that stuff on there, so lots of ways for people to dig down deep into some of that material.
Yeah, a lot of these live broadcasts now form the episodes of our Podbean. That wasn't always the case. We were once a podcast, primarily, not a live show on YouTube primarily. And that's changed now, of course, and that's for the better. I mean, we're moving on in technology and, the kinds of ways in which things are done. But the podcast, when it was just a podcast, was better produced in terms of adding audio and, the quality of the audio. At this point, I don't have the ability to go back and edit out all of the, misspeaks and areas in which people drop out and return to the calls, and all of the awkward stuff that I would have edited out when I had the time and opportunities to do so. So at this point, our listeners, I hope, are understanding that what they get is the live show with all of its little picadillos. But yeah, so that's the way things are now, and I'm sure things will change in the future as time goes on.
Wait until we're in VR. That's going to be interesting. Be like somebody sitting in here in the room with us, and yeah, it'll be so fun to have guys just sort of sitting around talking at them, but in real life. Or not.
No, I mean, we've got the potential to get. I don't know if we're still live. Yeah, it says
we're still live. Yeah, we lost the trailer though.
We lost our host.
Yeah, we're still live though.
But yeah, I mean, with this platform, listeners have the ability to chat in, and we can discuss their contributions as they comment in real time, or even call in. We have that ability as well. So, as time goes on, our listening audience might become more interactive, at which case the nature of the show will change somewhat, because we'll become more similar to, say, a call-in show. And we can have interaction with the people who are listening, and that might be fun as well.
That's an idea. Maybe we do an open mic night and see who shows up.
Yeah. Once that more than 2.5 people are listening per episode. Now, I will say that the comments in our YouTube videos have become fairly active, at least more so than they were. At this point, I haven't seen much interaction between the members of the team and the people who are commenting on YouTube. But hey, at least the commenters can interact with one another. So, we have an active community of commenters that is developing over time. One thing I'll mention is that it's not just these live shows that populate to our YouTube channel. Every once in a while, I'm able to edit together a video produced from the team, and against those videos, because I'm the kind of guy who likes to overproduce things. They include sound effects and video effects, and all of the cool video, visual things that I can do with the format of YouTube. So I really enjoy editing those.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good ones out there too. We've got a number of playlists on YouTube that people can go check out. So some of those contain the full series of response videos on some of those questions and hours of viewing pleasure.
So, the thing that the Mentionables have ended up doing, that's sort of our bread and butter, is to find lists of questions from atheists and then answer those lists of questions. And so our YouTube series are similar to our book, wherein we find we do a response video, for instance, to a video that has been produced by some skeptical YouTube channel or another. and they'll produce challenges, at which point we each respond to those challenges from our own particular perspectives and expertise.
Yes.
And so,
yes, 10 questions that no Christian can answer.
right. And then we have 3 Christians answer them.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Some of our earlier videos had myself, Caleb, Mark, and Tyler answering. I don't know, whatever his name is. Tyler answering. Yeah, now most of the newer episodes have myself, Caleb, and Mark answering. So, again, it's a rotation, and we'll see where it goes in the future. Clinton has become fairly active since the 2019 conference, and he's involved in all of our podcasts now. Podcasts, because live episodes, and he's been contributing more material to other things that we do, and so we're very pleased with that because he brings a lot of quality to the table.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I even wrote up my first satirical piece and submitted it to the Mentionables.
Yeah. Excuse me. Our articles don't get updated as much as I would prefer, but to a large degree, that's because I don't have the time to manage the website as much as I'd like. So,
yeah, I haven't really had much time to write much either, because number one, I tend to focus more on videos because people are watching videos more nowadays anyway, rather than reading articles. But also, considering that it's really hard to convince people to donate to your ministry. So I don't have any financial supporters at the moment for my podcast. So I have to do other work to supplement my income, for the pro-life work that I do. I'd love to get to the point where I have enough people financially supporting the podcast to be able to devote more time to that and to writing and other things. But until then, it's just the money-making things have to take priority sometimes.
Sure. And, I came out of the gate as a Christian journalist, and so that gave some amount of diversity to the amount of writing that I did. But I've sort of settled into being a one-trick pony at this point. And so a lot of my writing goes towards my research website, which is not the same thing as the Mentionables.
Yeah.
Research. Who would have thought you did research? We've never mentioned that on the show before, have we?
I'll probably have to bring that out more.
Yeah,
Bust
definitely.
out the fact, hey, everybody, I'm a researcher.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I got a laugh react on an article that I post. I typically do not post my research on my main Facebook feed. I try to reserve that for more personal things. But I did because I wanted to tag the guy who had provided me the material to respond to. And for whatever reason, wasn't allowing me to do that on my Switching Sides page or group. So I did it on my page, and I got one of my atheist followers gave the laugh response, the ultimate debunking of anything that you do.
Yeah.
Which was irritating. Honestly, if I had been posting something apologetic in there, I would have expected that and it wouldn't have bothered me. It irritated me because my research is impartial. I do not take a side in the research. And so when I posted it, the fact that he gave a laugh response to me indicated that he didn't read what I posted, or he did read it, but in his mind, it was like, blah, 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 Christianity's true, blah, blah.
Right.
Either way, irritating.
Yeah. But hey, that laugh emoji's an argument now. So
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's the new memes are arguments. We don't need memes anymore. We got a laugh emoji.
Yep.
Right. Yep.
Staying classy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you got anything else for us, Joel? I think we've covered a lot of ground in terms of discussing things. Anything else you wanted to touch on before we send this one out?
Well, we've talked about our history, we've talked about our present, we've talked about the strengths of our team, and we've talked about ideas for the future. I think that pretty much covers it.
I think so too. I think the one thing we're missing that I'd love to see more of is listeners getting in and letting us know what they'd like to see. So feedback is awesome. We would love to hear from more of those dedicated listeners and hear what you like, what you don't like, what kind of content you want to see on here. So that's always a big help for moving forward because it helps us shape and shift things as we need to.
Yeah, and when listeners ask questions or bring up concerns, you've got a tremendous resource to tap into because you've got different people sitting around who come from different perspectives, have different experiences, and have different expertise, and you can get a very well-rounded answer to your question. I know this because one of the things that the most active thing we do on the website is the question of the week, wherein we're submitted a question and you get a response from all 5 core members of the team, a different response from each member.
Yep, that is always fun.
So it's as if you submitted the question simultaneously to 5 different ministries, 5 different apologetics ministries, because that's essentially what you did.
Yeah. So be sure to check that out. If you have any questions, we'd love to have a shot at answering them. Well, with that, I guess we will close out for the evening. 10-second version where people can find stuff. Clinton?
Okay, well, you can, of course, find me on social media. Most social media sites. You can also find my podcast, Pro-Life Thinking, on YouTube, on blogtalkradio.com/pro-life thinking, and also on iTunes. And the purpose of the podcast is to train people to make the pro-life case effectively and persuasively. And so to get the most out of that, you're going to want to follow both the audio podcast and the YouTube channel as well.
Awesome. Fantastic.
How did I do?
That was good.
Okay.
I didn't have my timer going, but that was pretty close. I think that was about 9.6.
Okay, cool.
I
just got it in.
Yep. Joel?
So I have a website, joelfurchus.com, and I post whatever project I happen to be working on at the time on there. You know, if I'm in an art mood, my art is up there. If I'm in a research mood, my research is up there. Whatever it happens to be. Right now, I've got about half and half. You go on and I have a button for my art. I have a button for my research because I'm getting a lot of attention for my research after appearing on Unbelievable. Some people have been seeking me out and they've been finding, say, my webpage, which didn't have my research on it. And so I had to kind of switch to that. And they found like my Twitter feed and my Facebook feed, none of which had my research because I try to keep my private stuff private. So yeah, switching sides. I've got @side switching for my Twitter feed. I've got Switching Sides, which is a Facebook page and group where I publish my research, and I do so on my website, but I also publish other things that I do on the website. And of course, I'm heavily involved with Mentionables, so you can catch Mentionables at thementionables.org and Mentionables1, at Mentionables1 on Twitter. And then just search for the Mentionables on Facebook. We've got our web page.
Yep. And then other thing I do primarily aside from this is over on Question Christianity on Facebook and YouTube. So check that out too. Conversations, a little bit of a different gear, dealing with skeptics and kind of new believers, apologetic equipping kind of stuff. So check that out too. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining me for this retrospective dive. It's been fun, informative, and cool to see where things go down the road.
And since we're doing a retrospective, I'll go ahead and close us out with "We Are the Mentionables."